In the time when the world was carved by the sweep of legions and the hum of forges, Aurantia stood as a beacon of imperial power. Its capital, Orton, crowned a high plateau above swirling rivers and fertile plains. From the sun-forged mines in the southern hills to the grain-rich delta in the north, the empire's wealth pulsed through its streets, carried by caravans as vast as Roman corn fleets or the trade convoys of Han China. The Aurantian Senate, its emperor presided over a realm of more than 50 provinces, some desert, some mountain, some tropical, each paying tribute in gold, precious goods, and soldiers for generations. The Solari coin, made of nearly pure gold, was the foundation of trust. Much as the Roman aureus once circulated across the Mediterranean, the Aurantian Solari were accepted everywhere. Distant merchants from the Silk Coast accepted them in exchange for silk, spices, and ivory. Provinces sent their taxes in them. The armies of the legionaries were paid in Solari. The mints of Orton and the provincial capital struck them with the emperor's visage. This solid value underpinned Aurantia's military and political might. But power demanded more than stability. Under Emperor Solon Maximus, the boundaries of Aurantia were stretched to their limits. He ordered new roads like the Roman Via Appia, built aqueducts that carried water to high terraces, and erected temples that rivaled the grandeur of the Parthenon. The cost was astronomical. The treasury, once flush, began to feel pressure as provincial contributions fluctuated and military campaigns grew larger. The Senate debated austerity, but the emperor's vision was grander: more forts, more soldiers, more expansion. Compounding the crisis, the sun-forged mines, which had once yielded rich veins of gold, now struggled to produce enough ore. The yield declined, and the cost of labor rose. The mining governor swore to deliver, but nothing matched the demands coming from Orton. So Solon issued a secret decree, beginning a controlled debasement. The government would reduce the gold content of the Solari from nearly 100% to 90%, mixing in copper and brass. To the untrained eye, nothing would change. The coins would weigh the same, bear the same design. But suddenly, Aurantia could mint more coins for the same gold. In the treasury, the increase felt like profit. In the provinces, it felt like the first tremors of a tremor. At first, inflation was subtle. Bakers raised the price of bread. Smiths charged more for tools. In the remote province of Marcellus, harvesters whispered that they could no longer buy as much with the Solari as they used to. Merchants in the port of Lysander, which handled grain shipments from the Nile-like delta, negotiated harder, sometimes demanding payment in fine linen or raw silver. Instead of the bastardized coin, the Senate ignored warnings. They saw more coins in the treasury and more soldiers in the barracks. The emperor's armies marched on, funded by a currency whose base metal portion was growing. The soldiers, loyal but sharp-eyed, accepted their coin, but they began hoarding gold jewelry instead of spending Solari. In camps, they traded their pay for pure gold with camp followers who understood how trust was fraying. In time, the debasement deepened. Under Emperor Valcherion the Builder, who succeeded Solon, the Solari were reduced to about 70% gold. This new coinage was known in whispered court gossip as Valcherion's alloy. Provincial governors begged for clarity. How much weight of gold remained in each coin? The mints responded with official proclamations, but no transparency. The people felt the change. A bowl of grain that cost 2 Solari before now cost 5. A wool cloak that once cost 10 now cost 18. In the remote northern reaches, far beyond the legion's reach, among tribes that once paid tribute, trade slowed. The caravans that once carried our ancient coin and goods to them returned empty-handed, or refused the Solari outright. These frontier lords no longer saw the benefit of allegiance. Their own tribal gold ringed their fingers. They did not need a debased imperial currency in which to trust. Meanwhile, ambitions mounted. Empress Lyrana the Conqueror ascended. She believed in expansion above all. She launched campaigns eastward into fertile valleys and across high mountain passes, making her legions march farther than any ancient general before her. But war was expensive. The mints struggled to keep pace with the demand for payment, supplies, and tribute. Lyrana doubled down on the policy of debasement. Under her, the Solari's gold content fell to just 50%. The people recoiled. The coins looked the same, bore the same imperial face. But purchasing power was being hollowed out. Inflation accelerated. Grain, which had once flowed from the northern delta to feed the capital in great barges, now cost its weight in Solari. Many farmers refused to sell, preferring barter or demanding payment in goods. Tax collectors returned from the provinces with chests of solari that bore the emperor's image, but seemed to vanish when redistributed. They handed out less real food, less building maintenance, less support for the legions. Soldiers muttered about gold's disappearance. In their barracks, they traded ori trinkets among themselves for use in foreign markets rather than spend. Worthless solari in Orantia itself, the treasury, desperate, took extraordinary measures. In a decree spoke across the land, Lorana announced that all heavy golden statues and temple offerings were to be melted and reminted into solari. Priests and nobles resisted, but the decree was carried out. The sacred golden idols that had once stood in the great temples were broken down, tempered, and restamped into coin. The people understood the humiliation. What had symbolized divine favor was now base metal, dressed as holy gold. But it still didn't buy enough. In a final, fatal act, Lorana ordered the solari minted at just 20% gold. Now 80% was brass, copper, cheap alloy. The mint masters warned that this would destroy confidence. But their warnings were silenced by the pressure of war and the imperial ambition. The coins were struck, polished, weighed. They passed casual inspection, but for the merchants, soldiers, and common people, they were already corrupted. The marketplace convulsed. In Lysander's harbor, ship captains refused solari, demanding payment in silk bowls, rare woods, or pure silver ingots. Grain merchants in the northern delta walked away from caravans when given bags of solari. The great corn trade slowed. In the provinces, tax collection collapsed. Provincial governors pleaded for reform. But the Senate remained in thrall to the emperor's ambition. Inflation roared like a beast freed. Prices first doubled, then quadrupled. Farmers stopped bringing produce to the city, fearful that the coin they received would buy nothing but hunger. In remote regions, barter returned. Cattle for salt, grain for tools, silver jewelry for livestock. The rich could hide gold under their pillows. The poor were left holding worthless discs stamped with the imperial face, soldiers. Once the bedrock of Orantia rebelled. The legions of Dawn, elite troops charged with guarding the capital, mutinied when their pay dropped so dramatically. They petitioned for land grants instead of coin. They demanded tribute in gold. They deserted in platoons. Some generals declared their own provinces independent, creating war bands loyal only to them or to provincial treasuries rich in real gold. Foreign powers, long kept in line by tribute and fear, sense weakness. The Confederation of the Southern Kingdoms, a coalition of once subjugated states, cut off trade. Their blockade starved the capital and strangled our ancient commerce. The frontier clans in the mountains seized the opportunity. They overran garrisons left unpaid, burned forts, and declared their lands free. Back in Oriton, hunger reigned. The great aqueducts, which once brought life to the city, now carried only dust and the echoes of distant memory. The Senate, terrified of revolt, issued edicts demanding precious metals be surrendered in exchange for newly minted solari. Citizens dragged their heirlooms, gold combs, earrings, small statues. Priests melted down religious artifacts. All were promised new coin, but the coin was rapidly debasing in value. Public unrest escalated into open rebellion. In the eastern provinces, governors claimed the emperor had bankrupted the realm. They raised their own banners. In the north, tribal chieftains allied with rebellious Roman-style legions that had turned coat. The border collapsed. The empire that once ruled with disciplined legions now found its own soldiers looting its temples. The capital was divided. Noble families barricaded themselves in their mansions, while hungry commoners attacked granaries and feed stores. The Senate attempted to negotiate a peace, but there was no gold left to pay for even the most fragile truce. On a moonless night, the final assault came. Armies from the Southern Coalition marched into Oriton, not in force, but with calculating restraint. They met little resistance from a broken, leaderless city. Soldiers simply opened the gates. No great battle was fought. No heroic last stand. The city's heart gave way not to the sword, but to silence. When dawn broke, Oriton smoldered. The golden towers stood blackened. The temples shattered. The statues melted. The treasury, what remained, was empty. The mint was abandoned. The solari lay scattered in the streets, trampled beneath bare feet as people searched for food, not fortune. The emperor, Cassian Solarius, had fled to his private villa. There, surrounded by loyal retainers and sycophants, he held his last pure solari coins, the rare ones struck before the final debasement. He gazed at them long into the night as his capital burned. When the mob found him, He offered the coins as his ransom, but they spat at them and dragged him into the streets. No one wanted his worthless promise of restoration. In the years that followed, the empire disintegrated. Provinces declared independence. The Southern Coalition formed a new confederation. Border clans formed their own lordships. Farmer kings rose in the highlands. Warband chiefs in the valleys. Trade fragmented. Caravans avoided the ruins of Oriton. The old roads decayed. The aqueducts broke. The common coin, the solari, was replaced, piece by piece, with new local currencies barter, and barter backed by real gold. Bards sang of our ancient golden age, but they also whispered the real cause of its destruction, not foreign swords, not barbarian invaders, not drought or plague, but the slow rot of a currency once sacred, now hollow, like the Roman Empire's collapse tied to debasement of its silver coinage, or the way medieval empires mismanaged their mints. Our ancient fell because its leaders believed they could spend more than the world could sustain. In this ancient empire's final fragment, scholars recorded the lessons. An empire's strength is only as real as the trust in its coin. You cannot make glory without risking decay. Ambition without restraint is a grave for nations. And though our ancient banners no longer fly, its story remains etched in the ruins. A caution written in gold, alloyed with hubris, and paid for in blood.